My rich aunt found out I was living in my car while working 2 jobs to pay for college, and my cousins were making fun of me to everyone. Now she's excluded them from her will and my uncle is livid. I, 19F, have been struggling to make ends meet while attending college, and I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but recent events have left me completely shocked and overwhelmed. The way my life has changed in the past few months feels like something out of a movie, but every word of this is true. My parents passed away in a car accident when I was 16, and while they left me some money, most of it went to settling their debts and medical bills. I still remember the day of the accident like it was yesterday. I was at school when the principal called me to her office. My whole world shattered in that moment. The following months were a blur of funeral arrangements, paperwork, and trying to figure out how to survive on my own. I had to grow up overnight. I've been basically on my own since then, working 2 jobs while trying to maintain my grades and afford tuition. My aunt Sarah, 45F, is quite wealthy. She's my mom's sister and has always lived a very comfortable lifestyle with her husband Tom, 47M, and their 2 kids, my cousins Jake, 20M, and Emma, 18F. Growing up, we were close, but after my parents passed, they became somewhat distant. They'd invite me to family gatherings occasionally, but I could tell they viewed me as somewhat of a burden. I remember last Christmas, they didn't even bother setting a place for me at the main table. I had to eat at the kids' table with my cousin's friends who were visiting. My aunt Sarah noticed and seemed uncomfortable, but she didn't say anything at the time. Looking back now, I think that might have been when she first started noticing how I was being treated. Last month, during a family dinner at their house, I was completely exhausted from working double shifts all week. I had dark circles under my eyes and could barely keep myself awake. My cousins started making jokes about how I looked like a zombie and asked if I was doing drugs. I tried to laugh it off, but it hurt. Just the night before, I had been curled up in my car's backseat, trying to stay warm while studying for my midterms using the light from my phone because I couldn't afford to waste gas by running the car's battery. My cousins had no idea what it was like to worry about whether you could afford to eat that day, or to have to choose between buying textbooks or paying for a hot shower at the gym. They've always had everything handed to them on a silver platter while I've been struggling just to survive. The breaking point came when Jake started showing off his new Tesla that his parents had bought him for his birthday. Emma chimed in about her upcoming spring break trip to the Maldives. Then they both started teasing me about my beaten-up Toyota Corolla. Jake even took photos of it and posted them on his Instagram with captions like "Guess who's living the high life?" And some people just don't know how to succeed in life. Emma would comment with laughing emojis and add things like "OMG, is that rust or just extra decoration?" They thought they were being funny, but each comment felt like a knife in my heart, not knowing that I'd been living in it for the past 2 weeks because I couldn't afford both rent and tuition this semester. I excused myself to use the bathroom and broke down crying. I didn't realize my Aunt Sarah had followed me and heard me sobbing. She gently knocked on the door and asked what was wrong. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe I just couldn't hold it in anymore, but everything came pouring out. I told her about living in my car, about working at the diner from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., then rushing to my evening retail job from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., about surviving on ramen noodles and trying to study in my car using the McDonald's Wi-Fi. My aunt was horrified. She had no idea things were this bad. She immediately insisted that I move into their guest house, but I refused. I didn't want charity, especially not from family members who had watched me struggle for years without offering help. But she wouldn't take no for an answer. The next day, she showed up at the diner where I work with some papers. She had already contacted the college's financial aid office and set up a trust fund to cover my tuition. She also insisted on paying for an apartment for me near campus. I tried to refuse again, but she said something that made me cry. "Your mother would never forgive me if I let her baby girl live in a car while I live in a mansion." When my Uncle Tom found out what she'd done, he was furious. He started yelling about how she had no right to spend their money without consulting him, especially on someone who wasn't their responsibility. My cousins joined in, saying it wasn't fair that I was getting handouts while they had to earn their privileges. Apparently getting a Tesla as a birthday gift counts as earning it. The argument got so heated that my Aunt Sarah finally snapped. But what happened next showed me a side of her I'd never seen before. She stood up, walked to her office, and came back with a stack of old photos. She laid them out on the table one by one, pictures of my mom and her growing up in a small apartment, sharing clothes, working summer jobs together. "This is where we came from," she said, her voice shaking. "We weren't always rich. Your mother helped me study when I couldn't afford tutoring. She split her lunch with me when we had no food at home. She was there for me when nobody else was. And this is how you treat her daughter?" She reminded them that most of their wealth came from her family's business, which she had inherited from her parents. Then she dropped a bombshell: she was changing her will. Instead of everything going to Jake and Emma, she would be splitting her estate 3 ways between all of us cousins. My uncle and cousins went ballistic. They started calling me a gold digger and accused me of manipulating my aunt. They've been spreading rumors in the family that I made up the whole story about living in my car to gain sympathy. Some relatives have taken their side, saying I'm tearing the family apart. But here's the thing, I never asked for any of this. I was perfectly prepared to keep struggling on my own. I didn't tell my aunt about my situation to get money, I just broke down after months of exhaustion and stress. Now I'm caught in the middle of this family drama, and I don't know what to do. Part 2. My rich aunt found out I was living in my car while working 2 jobs to pay for college, and my cousins were making fun of me to everyone. Now she's excluded them from her will and my uncle is livid. My aunt Sarah says I shouldn't feel guilty because this is what family is supposed to do, help each other. She's angry that they watched me struggle for so long without stepping in. But my uncle and cousins are making my life miserable, constantly harassing me with texts and calls, telling me I ruined their family. I've blocked their numbers, but the situation is really affecting my mental health. I'm grateful for my aunt's help, but sometimes I wonder if I should just go back to living in my car to keep the peace. Am I wrong for accepting her help? Should I tell her to change her will back? Update. Thank you all for your supportive comments. A lot has happened since my last post, and I wanted to give you an update. First, my aunt Sarah found out about the harassment from my uncle and cousins in a way that made everything so much worse. I had been trying to hide it from her because I didn't want to cause more problems, but one day she borrowed my phone to make a call when hers was dead. While she was using it, dozens of horrible messages started popping up from unknown numbers. People I later found out were distant relatives and family friends who had gotten my number from my cousins. The messages were vicious, calling me terrible names and accusing me of destroying the family. Some even threatened to expose me at college and get me kicked out. My aunt read through all of them, her hands shaking with rage. She was beyond furious. She had her lawyer send them a cease and desist letter, warning them that if they continued to harass me, she would cut them out of the will entirely. That finally made them back off, at least directly. However, they've now started a smear campaign in our extended family and social circle. They're telling everyone that I seduced my aunt with a sob story to steal their inheritance. Some family members have chosen to believe them without even hearing my side. It hurts, but I'm learning to accept that some people will believe what they want to believe. The most shocking development came when my aunt's lawyer was reviewing the trust fund paperwork. It started when he noticed some inconsistencies in the business accounts. My aunt had always trusted my uncle to handle the financial side of things, signing whatever he put in front of her because she believed in their marriage. But her lawyer, Mr. Peterson, had been her family's attorney for decades, and something about the numbers didn't sit right with him. He spent 3 days going through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and what he found made him sick to his stomach. He discovered that my Uncle Tom had been secretly diverting money from my aunt's family business into his personal accounts for years. When confronted, he tried to claim it was for business expenses, but the amounts and timing didn't add up. My aunt was devastated. She's now filing for divorce and has temporarily moved into the apartment she rented for me. It's a 2-bedroom. She's also launched a full audit of the business and their joint accounts. Preliminary findings suggest he may have stolen millions over the years. My cousins are still living with their dad, and they're more angry than ever. They blame me for destroying their family, saying none of this would have happened if I had just stayed in my lane. But my aunt says their reaction just proves she made the right decision about the will. They're showing their true colors. Update 2. Things have gotten even more complicated. The audit of my aunt's business revealed that my uncle's embezzlement was worse than initially thought. He had been stealing money not just from the business, but from my cousin's trust funds as well. Apparently, he had gambling debts that none of us knew about. When Jake and Emma found out their father had been stealing their money, it was like watching a glass house shatter. We were all sitting in my aunt's living room when Mr. Peterson laid out the evidence. Jake kept shaking his head in denial, while Emma clutched her mother's hand so tight her knuckles turned white. The final blow came when Mr. Peterson revealed that their father had been stealing from their college funds since they were toddlers, replacing the money with fake statements he'd created himself. The trust funds they thought were worth millions actually had less than $50,000 each. All those years of looking down on me for being poor, and they had been unknowingly living on borrowed time themselves. They reached out to me and my aunt separately to apologize. Emma admitted that they had known about my struggles but had been too self-absorbed to care. Jake confessed that their father had always taught them to look down on anyone who wasn't wealthy, and they're only now realizing how toxic that mindset was. My aunt has decided to give them another chance, but with conditions. They have to get jobs and learn the value of hard work. She's also requiring them to attend family therapy sessions. To their credit, they've agreed to everything. Jake has started working at a local coffee shop, and Emma is now a waitress at the same diner where I work. The transformation in them has been almost unbelievable. Jake's first day, he showed up in designer clothes and nearly quit when he had to clean the bathrooms. But something changed in him after that first week. He started showing up early, staying late to help others, and even defended another worker when a customer was being rude. Emma's journey has been even more dramatic. Her first day at the diner, she broke down in tears after dropping a tray of dishes. I found her hiding in the break room, mascara running down her face. It was such a contrast from just a month ago when she'd been mocking me for working here. "I don't know how you did this for so long," she sobbed. I was so awful to you, and you were dealing with this every day. Now she's one of our hardest workers, and customers love her because she treats everyone with genuine kindness, something she admitted she had to learn from scratch. It's been interesting seeing them adjust to the real world. Yesterday, Emma actually broke down crying after a customer yelled at her over a wrong order. She apologized to me again, saying she never realized how hard my life had been. As for my uncle, he's facing criminal charges for the embezzlement. Most of the family has cut ties with him, especially after learning about the gambling. He's still trying to blame everything on me, claiming none of this would have come to light if I hadn't interfered with his family. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I can hardly believe how much has changed. I'm doing well in school and was able to quit one of my jobs since my aunt is helping with expenses. My grades have improved significantly now that I actually have time to study. Part 3. My rich aunt found out I was living in my car while working 2 jobs to pay for college, and my cousins were making fun of me to everyone. Now she's excluded them from her will and my uncle is livid. My cousins have continued to work on themselves. Jake has been promoted to shift supervisor at the coffee shop, and Emma is now one of the most popular servers at the diner. They both apologized to me countless times, and while our relationship isn't perfect, it's getting better. The divorce between my aunt and uncle was finalized last month. He tried to claim half of everything, but given the evidence of his embezzlement, the judge wasn't sympathetic. He ended up having to pay significant restitution to my aunt's business. The most surprising development is that my aunt has asked me to start learning about the family business. It happened during a dinner celebration for my first semester grades. She brought out a thick binder filled with company history, financial reports, and business plans. "Your mother helped build this company too," she told me. She was brilliant with numbers and marketing, but she chose to be a teacher because that was her passion. When I took over the business, she was my unofficial advisor for years. This company's success is as much her legacy as it is mine. She then revealed that she'd found notebooks full of my mother's business ideas and strategies, some of which had helped the company through tough times. "You have her mind for business," my aunt said. "I see it in the way you analyze problems and find solutions. I want you to help lead this company into the future, alongside your cousins. It's what your mother would have wanted." She says she wants me to take an active role in running it someday, alongside Jake and Emma. They've both been supportive of this decision, which shows how far we've come. As for my uncle, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the embezzlement. The sentencing day was harder than any of us expected. Despite everything he'd done, watching him being led away in handcuffs was devastating for Jake and Emma. They broke down in the courthouse parking lot, and for the first time, I truly saw them as what they were, scared kids whose whole world had just fallen apart, just like I had been when I lost my parents. Without even thinking about it, I hugged them both. We stood there crying together, 3 cousins who had gone from enemies to family in the truest sense. That was the moment I realized that sometimes the family you rebuild can be stronger than the one you lost. None of us attended his sentencing. Jake and Emma say they might try to rebuild a relationship with him someday, but for now, they're focused on becoming better people themselves. The way my Aunt Sarah stepped into my life as a guardian happened so gradually I almost didn't notice it happening. It started with little things. She texts me good morning every day, just like my mom used to. She'd show up at the diner during my breaks with home-cooked meals because she worried I wasn't eating enough. When I got an A on a particularly difficult midterm, she cried as hard as my mom would have. One night, as we were looking through old photo albums, she pulled out a picture of my mom at my age. "You look just like her," she said softly. "She would be so proud of you. Not just for your grades or for surviving everything you've been through, but for the person you've become. You have her heart." We both ended up crying for hours, but it was healing tears this time. She often tells me that helping me was the wake-up call her family needed. While I still feel guilty sometimes about all the changes my breakdown caused, she insists that everything happened exactly as it should have. I'm sharing this final update to thank everyone who supported me through this journey, but also to share something amazing that happened last week. My Aunt Sarah and I were going through some old boxes in her attic, looking for business documents, when we found a letter my mom had written to me before she died. It was tucked away in an old journal, dated just a week before the accident. Reading it, I could hardly breathe. It was like hearing her voice again after all these years. In the letter, she wrote about how proud she was of me, how she saw so much potential in my future, and how she knew I would do amazing things with my life. But what really broke me was the last paragraph, where she wrote about her sister, my Aunt Sarah. "If anything ever happens to me and your father, Sarah will be there for you. She might not show it right away, she's always been slow to open up, but she has the biggest heart of anyone I know. Trust her, lean on her, and let her help you when you need it. She's not just my sister, she's my best friend, and I know she'll love you as her own." Reading those words, everything that happened this year suddenly made sense. My aunt wasn't just helping me out of obligation or guilt, she was fulfilling a promise to her sister, my mom. When I showed the letter to my aunt, she started crying and revealed that my mom had written her a similar letter, asking her to watch over me if anything happened. She had been carrying that letter in her wallet for years, waiting for the right moment to step in. Later that night, we invited Jake and Emma over for dinner. As we sat around the table, all of us together, sharing stories and laughing, I realized something profound. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives can lead to the most beautiful transformations. A year ago, I was sleeping in my car, feeling completely alone in the world. Now I'm surrounded by family who truly care about me, not because they have to, but because they choose to. Emma mentioned that she's keeping her waitressing job even though she doesn't technically need to anymore. It keeps me grounded, she said. Plus, I like the person I'm becoming. Jake nodded in agreement and shared that he's thinking of opening his own coffee shop someday, starting from scratch instead of using family money. My aunt beamed with pride at all of us. To those struggling like I was, don't be afraid to accept help when it's offered. And to those who might recognize themselves in my cousin's former behavior, it's never too late to change, to learn empathy, to become a better person. Sometimes the universe has a way of teaching us exactly what we need to learn, even if the lessons come in painful packages. Last night, I visited my parents' grave for the first time in months. I told them everything that had happened, about the letter, about Aunt Sarah, about how Jake and Emma have changed. As I sat there talking to their headstone, a warm breeze rustled through the trees, and I felt, for the first time in years, that everything was going to be okay. More than okay, actually, everything was exactly as it should be.